All right, and good morning, everyone, and welcome to today's Canvas workshop. I'm going to go ahead and turn on my camera so we can see each other a little bit better there. I want to welcome everyone from Regent University here today to pick up a little bit of training dealing with assignments and grading today. So hopefully you had a good experience with Erin the other day regarding the content creation and course flow, which is really one of the more important aspects, I think, of Canvas as far as building your course and making it more like a course the way you would teach it. And so one of the things that I found as someone who was learning Canvas a few years ago myself was once I understood how modules work, then everything kind of fell into place. So hopefully you guys have a little bit of that. We'll be revisiting a little bit of the modules today as we go in and talk about building assignments and doing some of the fun things that we can do with assignments, grading, and using the speed grader as well. I would invite you to be sure and log into your Sandbox course. The link, I just posted it again back here, repeated the link that Amberly had shared just a moment ago. To get to your portal, you can go to regent.instructure.com. Or you can also go to My Regent portal on the left-hand navigation, and you can log into your Canvas account there, which will let you in. So thank you so much for that, Amberly. I also posted the agenda for today, but if you did just happen to pop in, I'm going to go ahead and reshare the agenda here in the chat too. I do have some resource documents we'll be sharing along the way too, just so you have them in your little Canvas toolbox, if you will. The agenda does have some great links also to some resource documents. And so be sure and grab hold of that for your future reference. But today I do want you to play along today. If you have an opportunity to jump in, if you are just watching today and just absorbing, that's perfectly okay too. Our time together can be spent by you watching or you doing. We can do it either way, but I would invite you to go ahead and follow along if you can. That way a little bit of muscle memory can occur where you can kind of, do the steps a couple of times, and then once you do it a couple of times, it becomes sort of a tradition at that point, right? Also, let me go ahead and introduce myself to you. My mouth has a mind of its own, sorry. My name is Matt Miller, and I'm a learning specialist here at Instructure. I've actually been with the company 1 full year as of April 25th, so I've survived my first year at Instructure. I'm actually a retired dean of online instruction, if you can imagine. I come from Central Texas. I have worked for 21 years at Navarro College. If you ever heard of the Netflix docuseries Cheer, well, that was the school that was profiled in that particular docuseries, for better or worse. And I was there for 21 years, mostly in the role of distance learning / instructional technology and media, and then also any type of thing that plugged into the wall that talked to the world. We actually used Blackboard for about 15 years while I was there, so that may sound familiar to some of you. If you've used Blackboard, of course, I know you guys are coming from Blackboard. I don't know how many years you all have used it, but we were using it for about 14 years. I found myself at a meeting in Austin with some of my other community college colleagues, and they were all leaning over to me saying, "When's Navarro moving over to Canvas?" And I'm like, "Are you kidding? We're married to Blackboard. Are you kidding? There's no way we're going to change." And as they told me more about some of the features and some of the things that Canvas had, I brought it back to our faculty and asked them, "What do you think?" And so we set up a couple of demonstrations and did a little exploring, and 100% said we should make this move. And so we did. And my president wasn't interested in paying for 2 learning management systems. And so one of the things that he told me to do was to get your faculty trained and trained up as quickly as possible, because we're not paying for Blackboard and Canvas. And so I had about 4 months before our first pilot. So if you can imagine that, but our faculty, of course, showed through just fine. Glenn has a question down here as well. How do you do side-by-side presentation and Sandbox at the same time? I think on the agenda, I got to remember sometimes how to do some of this myself, Glenn. Sorry about that. Let me see here on my agenda if I can show you. And by the way, yeah, please feel free to ask questions throughout today. I think sometimes that's the best way. Here we go. Changing the view settings and Zoom. How do I split my screen? If you're on a Windows or a device, if you do, Glenn, if you'll look at the agenda that I posted here just a moment ago, you'll see that I have a, this is for how to split screen for Windows. I'll put this in the chat for you. And if you're on a Mac, I also have a link for you there. There we go. All right, so you should have some little bit of information you can pop up there. I promise I will go somewhat slow as we go through some of our some of the different topics today, and hopefully I will pause as well and say, okay, now you guys go do this. All right, so we'll do a little bit of hands-on as we go through as well. So yeah, so that's my story. I'm sticking to it. I was fortunate enough. I did retire from Navarro, and I had about 8 years of community college experience prior to that, mostly in professional development, and got my start in distance learning at McLennan College in Waco, Texas. And from there, I retired after about 21 years at Navarro. I decided to hang it up, and my wife said, go get a job. And so I did. And so I was really fortunate. I've been using Canvas now for almost 6 years. And it was a really good move for our school. I hope you'll find it to be a good move for yours as well. So today we're going to talk about assignments and how to create assignments in Canvas. I'm also going to talk to you a little bit about the grading, because one of the things that kind of blew me away when I first started using Canvas and switching from Blackboard, if you'll recall, the Blackboard grade book, you could do most of everything there. If you wanted to weigh your grades and do all the things there. In Canvas, it's slightly different. And it was one of the things that I had to kind of get used to at first was that the assignments menu in Canvas is almost like the staging area for your grade book. I know that may not make much sense right now, but in a moment it will. All right. So anything that can be graded is going to appear in your assignments menu. You're going to see quizzes in there. You're going to see discussions that are graded and things like that. Anything that can receive a grade, you're going to find in the assignments menu, and you're going to be like, wait, what is all this stuff doing in this assignments menu? Shouldn't my quizzes be in the quizzes menu and my discussions be in that? Well, yes, they are. But again, if you think about the word assignment as having kind of two meanings in Canvas, one of them is basically assignments is your grading staging area where you will weigh your grades, drop the lowest score, do things like that. But then also assignments is a traditional, here's what something we can put out there for students for them to submit to us electronically. It is a traditional assignment as well. So Canvas sort of has two sort of meanings for the term assignments, as we will get into and discuss. If you want to create a gradebook column, for example, on the fly, you can do that in the assignments area by creating assignments. So we're going to talk about creating things today in the assignments menu. I'm also going to show you how the speed grader works. So the speed grader is a tool that allows you as the faculty to make some quick annotations on student submitted work. You also can use rubrics as well. So if you want to grade using a rubric, you can do that too. You can create some really meaningful just-in-time feedback for different things, making annotations on the screen, and you can flip from student to student and kind of go through your grading in a much faster way, hence the term speed grader, right? And then I want to take you into the gradebook and show you how the gradebook works. There's some really great features in the gradebook, things that you didn't have in Blackboard. So I hope that you will get some really good information out of that. The gradebook in of itself is a very simple tool. There's not a lot of things to do in the gradebook other than there's a lot of features, but other than that, it's really an easy to use type of tool. I think that you'll find much easier than maybe what you were doing in Blackboard. At least that was my experience, and hopefully it will be yours too. So to do that, I want to go ahead and invite you into your sandbox. So I'm going to go out here to my Canvas instance. Mine looks slightly different from yours. Yours is a very pretty color. Mine has the high contrast turned on so I can see it a little bit easier. But I would invite you to go out to your Canvas account, go ahead and log in. I'm going to take you into a course here I call my assignments demo. It's just has a lot of demonstration assignments in there and so on. You may not have a lot of stuff in your Canvas account just yet. I do know that you are migrating things from Blackboard, so you probably will have things in your course at some point, but maybe not your sandbox. That's okay. One of the nice things about Canvas is that you can actually set up your grading without having anything in it. All right, so how you're going to grade, particularly if you weigh your grades, that kind of thing. So I'm going to go ahead and click on my assignments demo. That's going to take me into my course. Hoping it'll be a little faster than this, but I did restart everything. I usually start everything over to clear my cache and everything. Just have to be patient. Okay. So here's my course. This is just a little demonstration course that I have with a home page and all of that. But what I want to point your attention to is the menu on the left-hand side over here. And I want to point out the assignments menu, or the assignments index, as we like to call it. So go ahead and click on your assignments menu or assignments index. It has been really, really raining here in Central Texas lately, and so everything has been kind of kicked up and stirred up. So my apologies for my voice. Okay. All right. So when you go to your assignments, I mean, I've got a lot of assignments in here, okay, already, just to kind of demonstrate what I'm going to show you with terms to setting up your grade book and everything. But I wanted to show you here that this is something that you will encounter. And as a new Canvas user, that's going to confuse you at first. You're going to be like, what's going on here? Because if you look closely here, you'll see, and you can ignore this up here. This is just a demonstration thing that I have in there just for other demonstrations. But you're going to notice that all of your assignments are going to appear here in a group called assignments. All right. So all of your assignments will kind of start life out here. But if you look closer, you're going to see quizzes here. And you're going to be like, wait a minute, what's a quiz doing in my assignments menu? Should it not be in my quizzes menu? Well, yeah, it's there. If you go to your quizzes menu, there it is. There's that getting started quiz, and all these other quizzes are there. So again, remember, the first rule of assignments in Canvas is that anything that can receive a grade is identified as an assignment. That's important to remember, because anything that appears here in your assignments index represents a gradebook column. So everything that's here is going to also be in your gradebook. If you have it here, and it's published, by the way, remember how you can publish and unpublish various little items in your course if you don't want students to see them and so on. If they are published and they're in your assignments index, then all of these items, and you'll notice here there's some discussions and assignments and other discussions and so on. We'll come back to that. But if I go to my gradebook, and my gradebook's a little well worn, so just to let you know, it's going to look a little funky when you go in there. But all of those different assignments are all here, okay, as gradebook columns. All right. So again, the assignments menu is going to act as sort of a staging area for our gradebook, as we'll demonstrate here shortly. And yes, notice up here that I can create assignments here as well. So if I have a writing assignment I want my students to submit, I can create an assignment and have them and make it an online assignment that students can submit to me and attach a rubric. If I want just a column in my gradebook, maybe I have a column for participation or some other type of nebulous sort of graded item, then I can add an assignment and I can choose no submission assignment, which basically means that student isn't going to do anything, and it will create a gradebook column as well. All right. And so we're going to do that in just a little bit, but I just wanted to make sure you know that when you go to your assignments for the first time and you start seeing quizzes and discussions, it's because your assignments menu works, is in cahoots with your gradebook. So the next thing you can do, and you'll notice if you look closely at my assignments, you'll see that I have some little getting started type assignments here. There's a getting started quiz. Let's introduce ourselves. There's even a little getting started assignment here that I've created. You'll notice that I've got some discussion topics for different units here, unit 1, 2, and 3. These are all just examples, by the way. You'll also notice that I have some writing assignments out here. I also have some major exams, a midterm and a final. And then I've got a bunch of little low stake quizzes. I even have an extra credit. I've even got more discussions down here. And then I've even got a group research project. Okay. So I've got all of these different types of assignments. Now, just very quickly in the chat, if you will, tell me whether or not you weigh your grades or if you award points. So in the way you calculate your grades for your students, do you accumulate a total number of points that the students can earn and that's their kind of their grade, or do you weigh your grades? Do you put them in different categories that are weighted and all that? Okay, so points for some of you, weighted for others. So it's a good little mix, it looks like, points and weighted. Okay, yeah, good deal. You weigh them and points. Okay, yeah. So with deference to our math faculty, okay, I do not hate math. Okay, I'm not very good at it. My wife says I have a special type of math she calls math that I use all the time, and it's just my own little mathematics that I created myself that is usually inaccurate. All right. And so when it comes to calculating tips in a restaurant or whatever, I have my own system. Okay. And it's not exactly kosher, right? However, I am not as astute in mathematics as I would like to be. All right, I've gotten better with age, but I like to keep things extremely simple. So typically, I like to weigh grades. That's just me, and it's not because if you weigh your grades, it's not because you're bad at math or anything. I have found it to be a simpler way of categorizing and grouping things. So yes, you can award different points, as you notice here. I like to grade on a 100-point scale. So for everything, all items, large or small, if they're big ticket items or little low stakes items here, I like to grade everything kind of on a 100-point scale because I feel like students know what a 90 to 100 is, or a 80 to an 89 and so on. But you can also, if you are awarding points, when you create the assignments, you can also choose a point value based on what type of assignment it is, right? So if it's a big ticket item like this midterm and final, you might have more points allowed to earn for those particular items, whereas some of these little low stake quizzes, you might make them lower, fewer points, and that's how your weighing occurs. If you are weighing grades, you can grade everything on a 100% scale, and it doesn't matter how many points that the student earns because the percentages is what matters. All right. So if I award 10 points for this little let's introduce ourselves discussion here, then 10 out of 10 equals 100%, right? So it's kind of works the same way. If I want to weigh my grades, and even if I don't, even if I'm just using points, I would make the argument that it's still a good idea to align all of your assignments by groups, to group your assignments. And I'll show you why, another reason why here in just a moment. It's imperative you do this if you are weighing your grades. And the nice thing is that if you have nothing in your assignments menu yet, you can go ahead and group your assignments and create the groups that you want to use. And then as you create assignments and quizzes and discussions later on, you can then assign it whatever group you've created for it. So just to kind of show you what I'm doing here, I have these little orientation sort of getting started assignments. So I'm going to create a group for those particular objects. So I'm going to go out here and click plus group, and I'm going to call it my getting started assignments or whatever. All right. And I'm going to click save. When I do that, it's going to put a little group down here. It's also going to tell me there are no assignments associated with this group. Let me just minimize this. I'm going to click this little arrow to collapse it just for a second. I'm going to move it up here just to show you how easy this is. So if I want to associate any items with this getting started assignments, I can go down here into this large group of assignments, and I can just drag them up there, just like that. Okay. Now I have these assignments grouped under this getting started assignments group heading. Okay. I have some discussions here. So I can create a group for my discussions, much the same way. So I'm going to click on group. I'm going to call it my discussions. It's going to create this little group down here. I'm going to move it up here just so I can see it a little bit easier. Notice I can grab those little 8 dots and drag it around there. And then one by one, I'm going to take each of these items and just associate it here. Now, yes, you can go over to the right-hand side and you can say, move to, and you can choose the group discussions there. And if you want it at the bottom, underneath all the other ones, you can do that and it will move it for you. But that's a little less fun than just clicking and dragging it. So I prefer clicking and dragging. I have some writing assignments that I want to group as well. So I'm going to create a group for that. So just to correlate this a little bit with Blackboard, in Blackboard, they called it categories. You created categories, right, for your different assignments. This is much the same thing, except for you're not doing it in the grade book. You're doing it here in the assignments menu. Excuse me. I'm going to drag these guys where they belong, right here. Okay. And I've got these major exams. So I'm going to create a group for those. Spell it correctly. Kind of while I'm doing this too, you may not know this, but I actually have a Virginia Beach connection. I went to high school in Virginia Beach. I'm a proud graduate of Floyd E. Kellum High School many, many years ago. So I went to school there all my high school years. So I was really excited when I saw Regent. Yeah, the Go Knights, exactly. We were really good back then too. We got like all city stuff. We had those Matico boys, those movers, they were all going to school there at the time I was there. John, yeah, it was Johnny and Joe, and I can't remember. There was a whole slew of them there. Johnny, I think, was our quarterback, or Joe Matico was our quarterback. Yeah, I think he ended up going to UVA and getting injured or something, but he was a really good athlete. And then down here, I've got all of these quizzes. So I'm going to create a group for them. Just notice how I'm creating these little groups here. Maybe a little overkill. Maybe these are my minor quizzes. Obviously what you would do is you would look at your syllabus and you would create the groups exactly based on what your syllabus is. You may only have 4 or 5 categories or groups. Create those. And then I'm going to show you how to weigh them. So there's all my little minor quizzes. So I'm going to drag all these down here. Yep, I worked at Lynn Haven Mall. There's a Piccadilly cafeteria still there. That's where I worked. Wasn't the most glamorous job I could think of, but it got me through high school. All right. Notice here that I've got a couple other discussions. Let's see. I can move these up to my discussions here. So I'm just going to associate each of these group items here to whatever it is, whatever group I've made for them. I've got this major research page project, and I've got an assignments area. So I'm going to go ahead and create a group for my project. And I'm going to move that project down here. And then now you'll notice that in my assignments area, the only thing I have left is this extra credit project. Now, you may not give extra credit. I just want to show you how it's done. Yeah, so unfortunately, Glenda, because I have so many, I have to move them one by one. You can't group, unfortunately, you can't move a whole slew of them. However, if you don't have any assignments, then as you create an assignment, as we will in just a little bit, as we create an assignment, as we're going through the creation settings, we can assign it whatever group we want. So you can create your groups first, okay? Here in your assignments index, you can go ahead and create all your groups with no assignments or anything in them. And then as you create your assignments, then you can associate them with whatever one of these groups that you want. So now I got this extra credit. If you don't do extra credit, no big deal. I'm going to rename my assignments here that I had, this one that we started with. I'm going to rename it extra credit just to show you how that works. Okay. So to do that, I'm going to go to the three dots over here in that assignments group, go up here to edit, and I'm just going to rename it extra credit for now. Now, this sets the stage for what I'm about to show you next, and that is weighing your grades. If you're not weighing your grades, don't sweat it, okay? You don't have to do this next step, but I do want you to, before we show you how to weigh, actually, I'll do the weighing first, and then we'll do a hands-on, okay? So if you are weighing your grades, then this next step is something that you will do. If you go up here to the upper right-hand side of your screen, you'll see that there are three dots up here. So you've created all of your groups. If you had any assignments to associate with those groups, you've drug them there, you've put them in there where they belong. Now up here, if I go up here to the upper right-hand side of the screen, click on the three dots, you're going to see assignment groups weight right here. So I'm going to click on assignment groups weight, and it's going to give me this little window that says weight final grade based on assignment groups, where I'm going to click this little dot right here. And folks, this is where you can assign your percentages just like that. All right. Now forget this top one up here because that's just a little demonstration. But let's say our little getting started assignments, maybe they're going to be worth 10% of the overall score. So not a huge dent if they don't do these particular three assignments or whatever. But there's our, we can award it 10% of their overall grade. Maybe discussions are going to be like, 15% of the overall grade. Maybe there's several of them, but they're pretty low stakes. You can see a running total is starting here at the bottom here of my percentages. Let's say our writing assignments, though, are going to be 25% of their overall grade. And maybe the major exams are also going to be 25%, even though there's just a midterm and final. That midterm and final is going to make up a quarter of that student's grade. All right. Now this is just for demo. Your syllabus probably has something different. And I'm just kind of making these numbers up as I go. And now maybe my minor quizzes, maybe that's only, 10%. And then maybe my project is another 15% of the overall grade. Now notice that that leads to 100%. Now this is something that is different in Canvas that you did not have in Blackboard. In Blackboard, when you weighed your grades, could you exceed 100%? No, it would give you a little error saying, no way, Jose, you can't do that. Okay. In Canvas, however, if you have something like extra credit, I could go in and pop in a number there and notice that it jumps my total up to 105. All right. Now, this is important because if a student elects not to do the extra credit, because this 5% is above 100% of what's being graded for everything else in the course, then they will not be penalized. In other words, they won't have points actually deducted from their overall grade total because this 5% exceeds 100. All the other grading comprises 100% of their grade. However, if they choose to complete the extra credit, okay, provided that they do it perfectly and everything is great, they have the potential to earn up to 5% more of their overall final grade. All right, does that make sense? All right, so this 5%, the technical term we use for that is called gravy. I'm just kidding. It's just above and beyond, okay? In addition to that, you might have items. For example, I will use this templates for non-demo. I could create a group called non-graded items or practice assignments or whatever that I can still award points to. However, if I put them in a 0% calculation, then those grades will not be calculated. Okay, so you can quickly create a non-graded place and then put all of your non-graded or example or practice type assignments and quizzes or whatever there, and they will not be counted. Okay, I'm going to pause here and ask if anyone has any questions. Feel free to unmute your microphone, by the way, too. We're going to keep this real informal. So I want you to ask away if you have any questions as we go through.
Hey there, Matt. I was, this is Shannon. I was a little bit distracted when you showed us how to get to the weighted grades. Could you just show me that one more time if I'm inside assignments?
Yes. So just go up to the upper, I'm going to go ahead and hit save. In your assignments menu, just right up there, this is taking a moment to do its thing, sorry.
That's okay.
Way up here, you're going to click on those three dots and choose assignment groups weight.
Gotcha. Thank you.
You bet. Now, I found that to be much easier than what I had to do in Canvas, in Blackboard. When I used to teach Blackboard, I would always say, I use three terms for faculty. I would say, okay, for faculty, for whenever you're weighting your grades, I called it the three-step process of build it, size it, and stuff it. So you build your categories, you size them by whatever percentage they are, and then you stuff it with whatever assignments belong to each category. The principle is very much the same. We just built it by building our groups. We sized it by going up to the weights, and then we stuffed it by making sure that each of these items are in their respective category. So build it, size it, and stuff it. There we are. Should be on a t-shirt. Okay. I want you to go ahead in a moment. I'm going to give you a minute or two. I want to put a poll up there. I want you to go ahead and build some groups and start weighing them. If you weigh your grades, if you do not, then hang tight, and I'll show you a couple of other reasons why grouping your assignments might be a good idea. So I'm going to go out here and choose. I'm going to launch this hands-on activity. I'm going to invite you to just take a moment to go ahead and build a couple of groups there, and then go up there and weigh them if you want to. If you have assignments to put in there, great. If you don't yet, that's okay. You can do this ahead of time. You can do it the first thing you can do. The nice thing is when you copy your course, all your assignments and things like that, their weights will also copy from one semester to the next or from one section to the next. And thank you for that, Stephen. It's good to hear. So as you complete the activity, you'll just mark it on the poll. Or if you're just watching, just say, I'm just following today. Please get with the program. We are recording these sessions. I think I mentioned that early on, just in case you didn't know. We are recording these sessions, and we'll make these available to Rachel and her team for posterity, for later viewing if you need to. Yeah, so the green check. Thank you, Stephen. So if you'll see some of your assignments that have a green check over here and some of them don't, are you talking about the green check right here or this little green check right here? The smaller one or the larger one? I'll put it that way. The larger one. Okay. Yeah. So this means published. So in Canvas, providing a student hasn't submitted something, in this situation, the student has. In Canvas, whenever you create an assignment, they will come into the world unless you publish them when you create one. Just like your course is unpublished until you publish it, assignments and other types of features in Canvas, you can remove them from student view if you don't want your students to do them, or maybe they're assignments you're not going to use, but you don't want to throw them away or whatever. You can simply unpublish them, and it will just essentially hide them from the students and take them out of the score calculations. So if, for example, I took the Getting Started quiz, I went ahead and unpublished that. If I go to my grade book, you're going to notice the Getting Started quiz is going to be gone because I've unpublished it. So anything that is unpublished will not appear, nor will it be calculated in the grade book. There's the Getting Started quiz is gone. There's the Getting Started assignment, but the quiz is actually gone. If I go back to my assignments and I publish those two items there, now when I go back to my grade book, they should be there. There they all are. The smaller little check mark, just in case you're interested, if your if your school uses a grade passback system, mine did not. But let's just say, for example, what are you guys using? Are y'all using like a Lucian colleague or Banner? What student information system do y'all use there?
We use Banner.
Banner. Okay. Yeah, we used Banner's ugly stepbrother colleague. Okay. We had other names for it. I'm not going to share it here, but colleague was our student information system. So Canvas does provide a way that if you want to send grades back to your student information system, I see this more in K through 12 than I do in higher ed. Although some higher ed institutions have it set up, you can choose which assignments are going to go back to colleague or Banner or whatever. And so that's what that little check mark does. So those that are checked are grades that are being sent back to the student information system. Those that are unchecked are not being sent back. So there's that too. I see a Q&A here. All right.
Matt, this is Brian. I have a question.
Yeah, by all means.
So in my version of Sandbox, when I unpublish an assignment, it actually does show up in grades.
Okay.
As unpublished. What did you check? What setting did you check to make it not show up?
I'll show you. So in the grades itself, in Gradebook, there's a couple of things I like about the Gradebook, and we're going to get into a lot more detail here in just a little bit. But here, let me remember where it is. There is a way to show unpublished assignments. I remember how to do this. That's not it. Sorry, maybe it's over here. Oh yeah, under view options. Yeah. So, okay. So in the Gradebook, I click on this little gear icon over here. And there are some view options. If you have this, if it's already turned on, you can see that I can also show unpublished assignments if I want to in the Gradebook. They're going to appear as unpublished, but that could be a lot of information, you know, if there's I have a lot of unpublished assignments, it's going to clutter up my Gradebook. So I typically don't like to show my unpublished assignments, and so therefore they're hidden. But under view options is where you'll find that. Okay. Yeah. And so if you don't have that enabled, that's your Canvas admin hasn't enabled it, but it's probably in the back end. So a setting that you don't have is that it's probably showing the unpublished assignments there. All right. So that's something. And I know, you know, there's going to be a lot of little quirky things that'll go on as you're getting used to using Canvas because there's a lot of little settings. There's a ton of settings. Admins have 1,000,001 settings to kind of go through and make sure that, you know, they kind of adjust it and hone it to the way you guys want it. So that could be one of them. And as we go in the Gradebook, I'll show you you probably have late policies and grade posting policy only. And if you have those two, we're going to talk about those two today as well. But one other thing that I think is really, really cool too, in the Gradebook, while I'm here to show you, if you have students who drop, and you know how it goes, you have a student that's been plugging along and then for whatever reason they dropped, and the registrar or someone says, well, can you tell us what grade the student was making when they dropped, or a student has a grade challenge or some other type of thing? You can actually go into the student name column and click on the 3 dots there, and you can show inactive enrollments. So students that were dropped down here at the bottom, they'll have a little bar next to their name saying inactive, which means they've been dropped. But if you want to go back in and see the history of a student who dropped your course and kind of what their grades and things that they were doing up to the point that they were dropped, you can actually go in and review that too, which is kind of neat. Question came through Dr. Patterson. Is there a way to take a group, for example, discussions that are weighted 15% and further way? Not without creating 2 groups. Okay. So you would probably have to create 2 groups of like your super discussions and your regular discussions, and then weigh those accordingly that way. That would be the workaround, I think, for that. All right, I'm going to go ahead and stop the poll. Looks like a majority of you have completed the hands-on activity. With that, good questions, gang. Thank you. Let's go back to our assignments index. There's one thing I wanted to show you here as well that I hope will be helpful. one of the nice things about a learning management system is the ability to move content from one semester to the next, right? So I know most of you probably really are not interested in reinventing the wheel each time you get a new course to develop for you. So in doing that, you do have the ability to move your content from one semester to the next or from one term to the next. If this will pull up for me, we'll be in better business. Right now, it's just sitting here looking at me blankly. There we go. So you'll notice that I have due dates assigned to all of these assignments. You can see there's several due dates there. And remember, the nice thing about adding due dates to assignments is that if I were to go out to my course calendar here, as soon as you add a due date, there's nothing more you really have to do. Your course calendar is going to be populated. You can see I have my assignments demo. That's that green color that I have on the dashboard for it. You can see that my calendar is thinking really long and hard here. So when you add due dates, it automatically populates it on the calendar. And students can go out here and see when their items are due. All right, this is one of the nice things about Canvas, is keeping students informed. You'll notice that you have all of your different courses here, and I've got all of these different assignments and things and when they're due. As a teacher, I can see everything that's here. As a student, I can too. If I want to toggle some of these on or off, I can just toggle them off. Oops, do that way. And I can bring them back by clicking on the little color over there as well. If I want to change the color, maybe I have a couple of them, there's a little too close together, I can click on those three dots and apply another color, so that way I can see them a little easier on my calendar. If you want to change a due date for a particular assignment, let's just say this vocabulary quiz for lesson 8 is due on May the 18th right now at midnight, or actually 12:59 p.m. So I guess it's 1 a.m. almost. Then I would have to go into that quiz, edit the settings, go down and change the due date, right? And in doing that, it'll change it on my calendar as well. And students will also receive a notification that a due date is changed. Remember, Canvas has some really powerful notification tools that will email the student, okay, and send them a message if something has changed. All right. Now, if you're like me and you don't like to necessarily have to go through a myriad of steps to be able to do something, if I were to change this due date, instead of having to go to this particular quiz, click on the settings, go down and editing the due date and clicking save or submit or whatever, so it will change that due date. In Canvas, you can just pick it up and move, boom, just like that. It will change the due date on that particular assignment, and it will also notify the student. So it's going to, if you know, in case you're like, oh, I need to remember to go tell students I moved that due date, you can just move that due date right there. Yes, Heather, it is cool. And so half of you go ooh and half of you go ah. Ready? No, just kidding. I'm glad you were all sitting down when I showed you that feature. It is one of the great little features in Canvas that I really like. You know, Pew Research did a survey several years ago, back in like 2011 or so, and it was a distance learning type survey. But one of the things that they were asking students and faculty, for that matter, was in addition to several other questions about, you know, distance learning and things like that, one of the questions that they asked was, what do you value most out of a learning management system? And not just Canvas, but Blackboard or Moodle or Desire to Learn or Brightspace or what are the other tools that are out there. For faculty, it was pretty easy, right? You want to create rich content and experience. You want engaging content. You want your students to be able to, you know, really go out and engage the content and keep up with what's going on or whatever. When they asked students had a slightly different reply. And I'm just going to throw it out there in the chat. So tell me what you think. Do students value most out of a learning management system? Simplicity Absolutely. Communication, that's good. Easy to use, easy info, Henry, correct? Reminders, accessibility, yeah, keep them coming. A clear understanding of what's expected from them, yes. Yes, ease of use, I'm seeing that again and again, yeah, absolutely. User-friendly, yes, Claire. Yeah. If I had to sum it up in 3 words, easy and organized. Oh, you said a keyword, Dr. Kent. Good deal. All right. Doesn't crash. Yes, they want something reliable. I want to tell you something. We were hosting our own Blackboard for all those years. We had no backup server. And so we were hosting it. So when we had a power outage and things like that, and it usually occurred right around midterm or final. Okay. It's one of the reasons, folks, that I'm bald and gray, just so you know. It was like, things would always come down and it would crash that Canvas. Knock on wood, it's been a little bit easier for that. Responsibility for students clearly communicate. Yes, Lynn, that's good. Yes. Yeah, if I had to sum it up in 3 words, it's keep me organized. It would even be better if you can come around to my dorm room every morning and knock on the door and say, get up, sleepyhead, it's time to come to class or whatever. But, but they do want things that'll keep them organized. I did a survey prior to the pandemic, and I found around 75% of my students were using their phones to engage their online learning, which isn't the most ideal thing in the world, particularly for like tests and stuff like that. But that's what they had. That's what they used. And so, it taught me that as we develop our courses, we need to keep the mobile user in mind as well. But yeah, any of those things. So with the Canvas notification features and in the calendar, but being able to see what's happening on the Canvas dashboard, also know that when you go to the dashboard, the first thing you see in Canvas, in addition to all your courses, for you and your students, on the right-hand side, you have what's called the activity stream. And anytime that a professor adds a due date or deadline or anything like that to a course, not only is it visible in the calendar, not only do they get notified to their Regent email of things that are changing in their courses and added to their courses, and when a grade has been entered in the grade book, they also have an activity stream on the right that tells them things that are coming up and things that they need to get done. So again, with all of those things kind of converging on them to tell them what they're supposed to be doing, the hope is that nothing falls through the crack and they don't come to you saying, could you tell us what's due next week? Whatever, because hopefully they will already know. Okay. Not that they still won't do that. I'm just going to give you fair warning. You're still going to have those that's never read the syllabus and are going to ask you all those questions about what's in the syllabus. All right. I'm going to go back out here to our assignments demo. Good answers, guys. Thank you for engaging that. Excuse me. All right. Let's go back to our assignments menu. There's one other thing I wanted to show you, a couple of things I want to show you before we build an assignment together. And that is those due dates that are added here. When you move your course from one semester to the next, guess what? Those due dates will come with it, which means then that you have to go into each of these assignments and change the due dates, right? In order to keep up with the next semester. So if we're moving from a spring semester to a fall semester or whatever, then just know that you can move those due dates by going into each item one at a time. Well, that's not very efficient, right? So I'm going to show you a better way. If you go up here, again, remember that little 3-dot menu that I showed you up here earlier, where you go to weigh your assignments. In your assignments menu, if you go all the way up there again, you're going to see there's a little link called Edit Assignment Dates. So if I choose Edit Assignment Dates there, it's going to allow me to edit not only the due dates for each of my assignments here in one fell swoop, but if I wanted to add availability dates. Remember, whenever in Canvas, whenever you create a quiz, an assignment, or discussion, you can not only create a due date, which will put it on their calendar, but you can also create an availability date or a window of time in which it's visible to the student for them to be able to access it. All right. So while you still have to kind of do this one at a time, at least you can do it in one spot and not have to go into each and every one of them, okay? There is a batch edit as well. So if I click on the title up here, this little title box, notice it highlights everything. I can go up here to batch edit, and I can shift the dates by number of days. This is not an exact science, okay? This is an approximation that'll get your dates somewhere in the neighborhood of when they are. You'd still have to make adjustments on due dates or whatever. You can remove the dates here and availability dates as well as due dates and just kind of start over, okay? But hopefully it will save you a lot of housekeeping time. You know how it is when you move your courses from one to the next, you have to spend all that time going to changing due dates. By going to your assignments, you can change due dates for any quiz, discussion, or assignment right here. Good. I'm glad you guys liked it. That's good. That was also a really great feature that's been added within the last couple of years, which is pretty cool. Okay. So yeah, just throw 3 dots up there where you weighed your grades. Then you can also do that.
Hey, Matt, I have a question for you.
Yes, by all means.
In some instances, we have situations where a student has an emergency and they aren't able to take a quiz, for instance, during the window that's adjusted, and you don't want to reopen it for the whole class, but you do want to reopen it just for the student. Is that an option?
Absolutely. And I'm going to show you when we create an assignment, whenever you create an assignment, a quiz, or a discussion, you're going to have the ability to add exceptions to due dates and availability dates.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks.
So hey, good. It's almost like I'm paying you to say that, because it's almost, we did not coordinate that question beforehand. Okay. So just let you know that. But
Matt.
yes, I do want to show you that feature too.
Hey, Matt.
Yes.
I was dark on that same line. I didn't want to get into it, so thanks, Shannon. When head of course, you have to create like if a student has accommodations, need extra days.
Yes.
So you're going to get to that, but in that calendar, that's what I was getting at. If you move the due date in that calendar, you still have to go back, I guess, and touch.
Yeah, probably so. So here's the thing. I will see if I have 2 separate due dates and availability dates, or due dates for my students. The availability dates are a little bit different. But if I have 2 different due dates established for a student for this quiz, for example, in my calendar, I'm going to see both. So I can move both however I want to. Each student though, like, so for example, if Bruce in this class here, I've given some extra days to complete that assignment, then Bruce will only see the date that he's been assigned. And we'll go over that. I'll show you what that looks like in a minute when we add an exception. But that's a good point, good observation too. Thank you. So in this grouping here, one of the things also that you can do in addition to weighing is, let's just say, for example, in my writing assignments or in my class discussions or whatever, whichever one, whatever group I want to choose, maybe minor quizzes or whatever, it doesn't matter. If I wanted to drop the lowest score, okay? So let's say the student has several of these minor quizzes and there's a slew of them throughout the course of the semester. And the student misses one and they're like freaking out because they don't want their grade to be impacted and all that kind of stuff. And you were to say, okay, look, I'm going to drop your lowest minor quiz score or whatever, discussion score or assignment. In Canvas, you can do that. In a group that you've created, you can go over to those 3 dots there. And by the way, you see all the weights that have been added now that we've added our weights. I'm going to go to those 3 dots and I'm just going to go to edit. When I choose edit, you're going to see there's the name of our group. There is the percentage that we assigned it for weight, but look down here. The number of scores to ignore for each student. If I want to drop one lowest score, and I could do more if I wanted to, from this minor quizzes group, then I can just put a 1 there and hit save, and Canvas will drop whatever the lowest score is. Now, this is going to be a movable feast throughout the course of the semester. So a student might bomb out on lesson 2 quiz, but they might do even worse on lesson 4 quiz, whatever it is, as it kind of calculates, whatever that lowest score happens to be at any given time is what's being dropped. Okay. So obviously you have to have at least 2 assignments in that group to make this happen. But that's how you can drop the lowest score. So I'm telling Canvas to ignore the one lowest score for each student. Now, somehow, some way, some reason, Canvas decided to create this feature as well. You can feasibly drop the highest score if you want to. Okay. And I have asked, I've been using Canvas now for 6 years or so, and this always makes me laugh because it's like, okay, who in their right mind would drop the highest score for a student or whatever? And then, and I've always asked, can somebody tell me a reason? And I've gotten all kinds, for research purposes, or statistical purposes, you might, drop the highest score and the lowest score to kind of keep this happy little bell curve or whatever. And okay, I get that, but what kind of sadistic maniac would drop the highest score for their student? I don't want to be that guy. Okay. I didn't get to the teaching profession necessarily be liked, but then again, dropping their highest score seems a little bit draconian. So I'll drop their lowest score maybe, but that's just something, again, whatever your syllabus calls for. Notice here too, that you can also choose to never drop a particular assignment. So out of this group of minor quizzes, I can choose a quiz that, regardless if it's the lowest score or whatever, that it's always going to calculate that score. So maybe you have a student learning outcomes as type of assignment or something like that you want to calculate, regardless, then you can choose that as a means of calculating and never drop. You can add as many of those as you like, just like you can add as many drops as you like. If the vocabulary less than 10 that I've chosen to never drop ends up being the lowest score, Canvas will just then choose whatever the next lowest score item is, okay, and drop it. That makes sense? So that now I have the two rules here of dropping the lowest score, but never dropping this one here, regardless. All right. Okay, let's build some assignments. What do you say? So in Canvas, you have the ability to also add assignments. Remember that assignments can basically, the assignment that we build doesn't necessarily mean the student has to submit it through Canvas in order to be considered an assignment. And in future trainings, we're going to be talking about quizzes and other things or whatever, which are also, different forms of assignment. But if I want to add an assignment to here or add a gradebook column to my Canvas course, so maybe this assignment is something that we do in class or whatever, then I can go up in the assignments menu and click on plus assignment and start creating an assignment. But if you'll remember from last week as well, or from the last training, I guess on earlier a couple days ago, in your modules, you can also in a module click plus, and you can add an assignment there. If you don't have an assignment created, you can create an assignment, give it a name, and then add that item, and then go back and adjust the settings on that assignment as far as what type of assignment is or whatever. So you can build your course directly from the modules by adding all these different placeholders that you can go back and adjust. For today's purpose, I'm just going to go ahead and create an assignment in the assignments index, and then I can add that to a module later. So I'm going to click on plus assignment here and give the assignment a name. Or maybe this is my unit 5 writing assignment or whatever. Okay. Down here is where you would provide instructions. Oh, Linda, let me make sure I got your question correct here as well. So you said that we can do that in our master, and when it's copied over, it's ready to go. Yes, yes, you can. If a master course, you can do it all there and then copy that information over and it's ready. All your grading, everything else is ready to go. I hope that is your question? Making sure. Okay, good deal. All right, so here's where you would add your instructions. Okay. We always recommend adding 3 bits of information to instructions. We always, say to provide like an overview of the assignment, some step-by-step instructions, and then maybe even a support or resources type area, for your students. Again, you have this rich content editor here, so you could drop in a studio video if you wanted to of how to complete the assignment. You can upload files here if you want to. All of those wonderful things that you have with the rich content editor that you can add items there. And provide those 3 basic bits of information. So the overview would be kind of like a, just a summary or explanation of how this assignment relates to the learning. To the learning unit or whatever. Okay, just sort of, I call it the whys, explaining the whys of why it's there. And of course, you can always make your headings here for your different items. That kind of makes it a little bit better if someone's using a screen reader or whatever there. Under the instructions, I would provide them with some step-by-step instructions. Okay, and of course, all the questions that you get from your students, right? Think about them. Always think like a student whenever you're creating things in Canvas. How long? How many words? Formatting. All of those types of things that students will ask you, okay? Under support and resources, you could put some useful websites. Such as like the Purdue University Online Writing Lab, what got me through grad school, right? For formatting APA or whatever. It could also be some tutorials, you can add a couple of tutorials there. Here's Canvas has all these wonderful guides into the help menu over here. How to upload an assignment, how to do this or whatever. You can provide them with some tutorials and maybe even, support contacts if they have trouble, with their computer or something's not working right. Who is, contact the help desk or whatever. This is what I call the ounce of prevention, which translates into a pound of cure, right? So an ounce of prevention here will hopefully, as you provide some good instructions for your students for any type of assignment, discussion, or quiz, then that means fewer questions for you. It's a little bit of work up front, but once you have it, then it's a little easier for you to add that. And yes, Shannon, I'm going to show you how to add a rubric. And whenever you create the assignment, then you have the opportunity to add the rubric, and we're going to do that too. So once your instructions are there, you can go down a little further, and here's where you add your point value, okay? So I'm going to make it 100 points or whatever. But then notice assignment groups, all those groups we created, I can now associate as I'm building the assignment. I can associate it with the assignment group that I want to attach it to, and it will calculate it alongside all the other items in that group. Okay. And you'll see that when you add a discussion or a quiz, it'll ask you what group you want to put it in. So if you have your groups already built, you can just sort them that way instead of having to go click and drag them around later. You can display as points or percentages or anything else. You can even choose not graded. And notice here that you can also not count this toward the final grade if you want to. But even though it is part of an assignment group, you can also choose not to calculate it there, as opposed to putting it into a 0 point based group. And then under submission type, you have 4 submission types here. So if I'm just creating a column in my grade book, right, for whatever, then I add the assignment and I can choose no submission. This doesn't mean that the student isn't submitting something, but maybe it's a presentation that they're doing in the classroom, or maybe it's a project that they're working on. Maybe they're an art student and they've created some piece of art for me to grade. Okay, I want to be able to grade it in Canvas, so I'm going to create a column for it, but I'm going to call it no submission. And it's going to create that grade book column for me. And as you'll notice in a moment, I'll still be able to attach a rubric. So if I'm grading that artwork based on a rubric or that presentation based on a rubric, then I can build that. I can build a rubric for it too. The same thing is true with on paper. So on paper, suggests that the student is doing it the old-fashioned way. All right, they're turning in their paper, their work in class on a piece of paper. All right, again, whether you choose no submission or on paper doesn't really matter. All it does is create a column in their grade book for you to enter a grade for them for that particular item. Does that make sense? The external tool feature is you can choose, for example, you guys are using Canvas Studio, for example. You could choose a studio assignment. So if you've made a quiz out of your studio video, you can add that there. If you're using Office 365, you can do cloud assignments here. Or if you're a Google school, you can also add a Google Cloud assignment there, which means that you have an assignment or something housed in your Google Drive or your Office 365 OneDrive, and you can share that out with all of your students that way. We have a whole 90-minute workshop on, on just integrating Google and Office 365, but just know that the external tool allows you to do that. For those of you who are using Cengage or Pearson, MyLabs, or whatever type of other things, you will see whenever you integrate those tools from your publishers that they will be listed. The assignments will be linked as an external tool, which will link them to their Cengage classroom or their MyLabs classroom for Pearson or McGraw-Hill Connect or one of those other publisher sites. You'll see that there. Since this is a writing assignment, I want my students to submit this online to me. So I'm going to choose online as my medium vehicle for them to give me the assignment. Notice when you choose online that you have several options here. Obviously, I will probably have them upload a file to me, so I'm going to choose file upload. All right. But I just want to point out these other ones here to you as well. Text entry basically just gives your students a text box. So if up here, maybe I had a short answers, answer these 5 questions or whatever, then I can choose text entry, which present a text box to the student for them to answer the question. So I can add that as an assignment. They answer the questions right there within the text box. Okay. Important thing to know about the text entry feature here. And by the way, you can have more than one item selected, if you want to. But the text entry is something the student kind of needs to do in one sitting. So when they enter the text, there's no save button. They can't save it and come back to it. So they kind of need to make sure they do that in one sitting there. The website URL suggests that they're going to be uploading a website or giving you the link to a website. Media recordings allows the student to record themselves answering the questions, for example. Let's say they don't have the ability to use a keyboard or whatever, and they want to record themselves giving the answers. They can do that as well, depending on the student. Student annotation is not my favorite feature, but it is a submission type. This is where you would provide them with a file, like a PDF file, and they can annotate that file. So if I'm teaching English, for example, and I have a series of paragraphs and I want them to correct it by annotating it, they can do that. It works okay for stuff like that. However, it is a little bit less user-friendly on the student side, I have noticed. So again, it's not one of my favorite tools, but it is available. And again, the idea is you provide the document and the student annotates it for you. So for this assignment, I'm going to choose file upload, and notice that you also have a restrict file upload type. So if I told my students I'm only going to accept your assignment if it's in Microsoft Word, then I can choose this little thing right here, and it will tell me to type in whatever the allowed extensions are. So like a doc or a docx would only be Microsoft Word documents or whatever. My recommendation is don't really mess with this. This is not as big of an issue as it used to be when I first started 30 years ago or 25 years ago even. There was some of you, I'm going to date you here. I'm dating myself, so there. How many of you remember WordPerfect? Okay. And I'm talking about WordPerfect before work groups. I'm talking about the old WordPerfect with the reveal codes and all of that. Okay. I used to always laugh that, Yeah, I think there's like 4 people in North America still using WordPerfect, and they work in the biology department at Navarro. So I used to tell them that, and they used to get mad at me. But yeah, there's that. And then of course you had Works, which was another Microsoft invention, it was kind of a poor man's Word. Then you had Word 97, 2003, and then you had Word 2000, and beyond, or Word 7, and all of those different things. And some of them weren't all compatible. And so if if students were turning in their work and they turned it in the wrong format, you may not be able to open it. It created all kinds of problems. This was meant to kind of prevent that. But instead, what I always tell faculty to do is you tell your students that, it needs to be in Microsoft Word. All right. Yeah. Oh, Pica. Oh my gosh. Melody. You're too young to be talking like that. Well, how's this one? Harvard Graphics, and what was the other one? Oh heavens, there was another one we used to use all the time. But yeah, they're old school stuff. But it's not as much of a problem, and also you can use it as sort of a a teachable moment if a student does turn it in. If they're using Google Docs or Apple Pages or whatever, they can still save it as a Word document. So, I would always tell your students, if you're using those, just save it as that and turn it in that way. Okay. That's right. Rotary phones and mobile, 3.5-inch discs, or even 5.25-inch discs, all of those things are there. CD-ROMs, that's a term you don't hear very often anymore too. We had to go back through and update all of our policies and stuff because we were still referring to floppy disks and CD-ROMs and stuff like that. And students today are like, they have no idea what that is. After you've chosen your submission type here, then you can also choose the submission attempts, how many attempts that they get. If I wanted to allow them a couple of attempts, they can do that. Now, I know that you guys use Turnitin as well. So somewhere in here, you're going to see to apply Turnitin. So I believe you guys are using Turnitin, so you can turn that on. I do not have Turnitin, so I can't really demonstrate that for you, but it does work just fine with Canvas, and it does give you a good little originality report and all that kind of stuff as well. So there's down here under submission attempts is where you'd activate that. We're not going to cover this today, but you can do peer reviews as well as group assignments in Canvas. So if you wanted to assign a group of students a particular assignment or require peer reviews, you can do that too. You may not have the grade pass back system, but if you wanted to send those grades back to Banner, for example, you would select that there. And then down here under the assign to, the due dates. So in this class, I can assign a due date and availability date for everyone in the class by just choosing this little calendar, and we'll say that this assignment is due on May 31st. If I do not put an exact time or AM or PM here, it's going to default it to the end of the day. All right. I can do the same thing with the availability dates. I can choose an availability when it will be visible to the students or when it won't. However, if I have this as part of a module that isn't unlocked yet or not prerequisited, I don't have prerequisited. That's a hard word to say. Then, I don't necessarily have to mess with that, but I could if I wanted to. But the question we had earlier is, well, what if Bruce, for example, has a family emergency or needs some extra time? Okay. Oh, Stephen. Okay, I'm going to pause here. Stephen has a question. For writing assignments, how can you check if student use Chat GPT? The answer is you really can't right now. I have been playing around with it over the weekend, and folks, oh my gosh, it's just amazing. I was like, write a humorous story about my hometown. And it just started writing a story. It was right in front of my eyes. It was absolutely incredible. This is a brave new world we live in, guys. I'm just going to tell you, I have no idea. There is a guy, I believe, at MIT who's developed sort of an AI sort of detector, and we're looking at the next billionaire, essentially. But honestly, there's even a tool. So you're thinking about, students that are cheating. There's a tool out there called SpinBot. SpinBot is a paraphrasing tool. So you go out to Wikipedia and you paste the information here, and then it will give you rewritten text, and it will full turn it in. A large percentage of the time it will full turn it in because it rearranges sentences and all the algorithms that it uses. So this is just a free thing. It's been out for a few years. I have caught students using this, but in the weirdest ways. So I had a student that was having to write an article about the US Supreme Court. And so they went out and copied text from the web. And then when they paraphrased it, it kept coming back as like US Superior Court and stuff like that. So when confronted to say, okay, why are you using the word superior? They were like, you know. But my funniest one was I had a student, his last name was High, H-I-G-H. And so on his paper, he had his name at the top and it was all spun. He did the spin bot thing and his name came back as John Altitude. And he didn't catch it. And so it was like, okay, you know, it's not like dumb criminals, you know, you find, okay, guys, you know, or whatever. But those are little examples there that are, oops, let me see here, that you might find. So yeah, there's a lot of Chat GPT is a whole nother thing, another ball game because it writes original stuff. So if I want to add an exception for a student, notice that there is an add button. So right now I'm saying everyone in the class is due on May 31st at the end of the day. But Bruce, if I go down here and click add, let's say I don't have Bruce in this class. How about Stephen? Stephen is going to be due on June the 2nd, that Friday. I'm gonna give Stephen a couple extra days and I can make an exception availability dates there as well. So now everyone else in the class is due on the 31st. Stephen is due on the 2nd. Now, when I save and publish this on the calendar, everyone else in the class is going to see the 31st. Stephen is going to see June the 2nd, and I can see both on the calendar. Okay. So if I need to make adjustments and move them around, I can, or I can come back here and edit them here if I want to, either way. Okay. The next thing is adding a rubric. So when you create your assignment, and even if this was a no submission or on paper assignment, I can still come down here and add a rubric. Now, rubrics can be pre-built. They can also be added at the institutional level. So at Regent, you guys can have rubrics that everyone at your institution can use, and you can build them at the account level. If you have them, but for different schools. So for example, your medical school or your liberal arts department or whatever, you can have a rubrics created at the sub-account or departmental level or at the individual course level. The nice thing is if I create a rubric as an instructor here, I can recycle this rubric for all of my writing assignments, okay, at this class. It just can't share them with everyone else, all right? So here, if I want to add a rubric, and I'm gonna go find, oops, sorry. There we go. If you have rubrics already created, you can choose find rubric and then select the rubric that you want. However, you can also create your own rubric very simply here. And I'll just do one criteria just to show you what it looks like. But let's just say this is my writing rubric. Okay. Here's where your criteria goes. And you can add more criteria. So let's just say I'm going to do one for, you know, spelling and grammar. Is something I'm checking on. And now I've got spelling and grammar. Then you can see I have some ratings here. And you'll notice that it's kind of binary right now. I've got full marks or no marks, but I can add some more if I want to. So let's just say, for example, my full marks, I'm going to click on it. And instead of the word full marks, I'm going to use like exemplary or excellent or whatever. And then under the rating, I would need to define exemplary, you know, as it relates to spelling and grammar. So there were no spelling or grammar errors noted in this particular assignment submission or whatever. Under no marks, I could call it unacceptable, you know, and then I would define what unacceptable is as it relates to spelling and grammar. Okay. Excuse me. And then if I wanted to add sort of a middling area there as maybe, you know, acceptable, then I would define good or acceptable or whatever. You can use whatever euphemism you want. And now I have a 3 rating scale for spelling and grammar. I can add more criterion. The nice thing is that I can copy the spelling and grammar so I don't have to reinvent that wheel. And this time maybe have one on, you know, thesis. And then I'd go to each one of those and I would define exemplary, acceptable, and unacceptable as it relates to the thesis. And then I could add another one too for, duplicate one of these other ones there, maybe for the formatting, you know, APA formatting or whatever. And then I could define those as well. And I could also add one. So notice I'm just copying the one over and over again, but I'm just renaming it to, you know, conclusion. And very quickly, I can hammer out a rubric here. You can change the point value. Right now, the total number of points for the rubric is 20 points. But if I wanted to, you know, change it to 25 points for each section there, then it's going to give me 100 points. And the good thing is you can use this rubric for grading if you want to. So whatever they get on the rubric is what they get for the assignment, or you can leave it alone. You can still score with the rubric, but then you can put whatever score you want. In addition to this here, you also have the ability to create a range. So for example, instead of a hard 25% for getting, or 25 points for getting this right, 15 or 0, you can go in and add a range. And so you can award a point value of like 17 points or whatever. Okay. Yes, it's attached. So as soon as you build the assignment, Linda, at the very bottom, as soon as you click publish that assignment, at the very bottom, you'll see plus rubric. Okay. And I'll show you where that is in just a moment. And yes, you can whenever you have the rubric there, you can add additional comments. You can remove points completely from the rubric just to kind of give the students an idea of what you're scoring on, but then you can still be as capricious and arbitrary as you want with the grading. I'm just going to leave it like that, and I'm going to create the rubric. So again, and I'll come back to that in just a moment, but let me just show you. Oops, sorry. Here we are. So when you create the assignment, instructions go here, point value, the group that you want it to be in. Okay. If you want it to be an online assignment or whatever, how many attempts that they get, what the due date is, or whatever. And then when you hit save and publish, you'll see that plus rubric right here. So at the end of the assignment, you'll see plus rubric, and that for you rubric. Now, the cool thing is, because we just created a rubric, if I wanted to add the same rubric here, I can go find rubric. Let me find my assignments demo. Gotta be here somewhere. There it is. And I can edit this rubric. As long as it hasn't been scored with it, I can edit that rubric there. Sorry. Let me find out where it is. I got to find it. What did I do with it? I got all kinds of rubrics out here, so it's kind of hard for me to find everything.
I have a question in the meantime.
Yeah, please, by all means.
So when you add a rubric to an assignment that it was already created, and you wish to change something in that rubric, do you actually change the rubric, the original one, or are you only changing the one that is assigned to that particular assignment?
Well, so that's a good question. And I think the answer is that whenever you change that assignment, rubric, there it is. I just had to remember what the thing was. Okay. What course it was in. So I can add that rubric. So if I wanted to edit this rubric right here, I think it's going to tell me you don't have permission because it's used. Yeah. Once the rubric is used in more than one place, you cannot edit it. You can only edit it in the first,
Okay,
for the
thank you.
first type of thing. Yeah. I hope that helps. All right. So now you've got your rubric out there. I want to show you, we don't have a lot of time left, but I want to show you what that looks like from the student side and how to use the speed grader. Okay. So let's go ahead and do that really quickly. So I'm going to actually add this, one of these assignments to my modules. I'm just going to add this one here, maybe to my module 1 here. Because I have the assignment created, I can go out here and find that assignment and add it to my module there. And I can move it up here so we can see it a little bit better. Now, a student can come out to the course, and I'm going to go into student view, and you can always test using the student view. And I'm going to go out here as a test student, and I'm going to submit this assignment. So I'm going to go out here to my Unit 5 writing assignment that we just created. I can see what attempt I'm on. I can add a comment here. I can see how many points it's worth, when it's due. I can see the instructions. I can also view the rubric ahead of time, which is, I think, is extremely handy, right? Because now I know what my professor is looking for. All right. And then down here is where I can upload my assignment from my computer. Notice that students can upload studio assignments too, which is kind of cool. Also, they can upload from their Office 365 or Google if they want to. If that's where they're storing their documents, they can do that too. Thank you, Shannon. I'm going to go out here and upload my assignment. And I've got a essay that I'm going to add here. That's a Word document. And because I'm turning it in on time, all goes according to plan. I can click submit the assignment. I get a little confetti celebration telling me that I turned it in on time, which is a good thing. And now I can see my assignment that I have here. And now let's leave and go into the instructor view and show you what the instructors see. So as the instructor, I can go to my grades. I can find that assignment wherever it is. Unit 5 writing assignment. Notice in the grade book, I can see that something has been submitted by the test student. Okay. To get to the speed grader, I can go up here to the column header and choose speed grader. And it will take me to the speed grader for all of my students who submitted things. Or I can click there in the where the student submitted it, click this little window and choose speed grader here. The speed grader gives you this view where I can view the student's work here. Across the top, if I want to go back to my gradebook, I can click the little gradebook icon right there. Okay. I can download the annotation once I'm done annotating right here. Over on the right-hand side, I can see which students have turned it in and which ones have not. So none of these students have turned it in, but notice that I can flip to each student here. So there's Hope. There's Maddie McMiller. And there's test student who's turned something in there. I can also toggle from student to student with the left and right arrows. So if I want to go from student to student there, I can move through my students here pretty easily. Over on the right hand of the top here, I've got some annotation tools that I'm going to point out to you. I can download the copy of that particular item as well. Yes, you can. Yeah, you're going to love this too. I can assign the grade right away. I can see what the word count is. I can see when the last time the student viewed the document. I can also view the rubric. So I can go over here and I can start assigning what I see with the rubric. I can make comments as I'm doing it as well. So I can provide my student just-in-time feedback. The annotation tools up here, if I wanted to drop in a comment somewhere on the page, I can just choose this little teardrop looking icon. And notice I can choose the color too, okay? I can add comments anywhere I drop that little pin. Okay, and yes, it does work on the iPad. So I want to let you know that it does work really well. You can use SpeedGrader on your devices. You can highlight, and you can choose the highlighter color here. You can highlight a sentence or whatever you want and choose comments. You can add some freeform text here. Yes, you can. You can do it any way you want to. So you notice I went ahead and did my rubric first and then came back and did my things. And then I can come down here to the comments or whatever. So under text, you can then add, some, good point or whatever. And you can add some free form text out there. You can move that around if you want to, wherever you want it to be. The strike throughs, the same up here as strike throughs. So you can strike through a sentence or part of a sentence as well. Add your commentary there. And then my favorite is that ubiquitous red pen. You can choose whatever color you want, whatever line thickness you want. This works really well with a stylus as well. So you can go out here and start, drawing things and then adding comments. And so on. And of course, you can put boxes around stuff that you want to highlight too. So you have all these little tools available. Over here, again, in addition to the rubric, you can add some free-form comments right down here. And as someone pointed out, I could do text to speech. So I can come down here and say, overall, you did a really good job on this paper. And you can do text to speech there. I can do a video commentary if I want to. So if I have a student that's in a language class or something like that, I could provide a little presence to my student by providing a little face-to-face feedback or a little recorded feedback for my students. You can attach a file here. But then my favorite one is, and from being an instructor and a professor, that whenever you're grading all these papers that you feel like a broken record, you feel like you're saying the same things over and over and over again. Canvas has this little speech balloon here called the comment library. If you feel like you're saying the same things over and over again, instead of having to retype them all up, you can create comments and add them to the library here. So here, for example, I've got some ready-made comments. Overall, your essay includes some excellent points. However, be sure to follow the APA formatting guidelines. See Purdue University's online writing lab at, or good first effort. Pay closer attention to your spelling and grammar. Might be helpful you to reach out to your campus writing tutorial lab for proofreading or additional assistance. So any one of these that I want to use, I can just plug them right in. And then I can adjust and tailor them to whatever the student needs there. Let's do that ooh and ah again. I was kidding. So this is a very, very powerful tool. All right. And then, of course, I can save this rubric here, but I can also assign whatever grade I want. So I didn't use the rubric for scoring, so I can assign whatever grade I feel that the student earned based on the rubric and based on my annotations and all that good stuff. and I can keep grading very, very consistent. As a dean, I will tell you that I hated grade challenges. I hated them more than anything in the world. And a lot of times they could have been avoided with just a rubric where a student understood how they were graded and so on. It seemed less capricious and arbitrary, as I mentioned before, and it seemed like the students got a better understanding of what their professor was wanting ahead of time. Okay, so whenever you can, use a rubric. You can use rubrics in discussions and so on as well. So if you wanted to add rubrics to discussions, you can do that too. I said God point instead of good point. Let me change that to good point. There we go. All right. And then you can submit that to the student, and the student will get a full sort of disclosure as far as what's happening. Couple of things in the grade book, as you've seen, once grades have been added, you'll see the grades are added here. You can always click on it, go back to the speed grader and view what the student had. There's the comments there for the student as well. There's a couple of things you can do. So for example, as you enter grades for students in the grade book, remember they're being notified. And so they could be beating down your door wondering, I have questions about their assignment. If you want to pause notifications for a student, for this particular writing assignment, for example, I can go up here to the 3 dots and I can hide grades, or I can also change the grade posting policy to manually, which means all grades, these grades for this assignment will be hidden by default. There will be no notifications for grade changes or submission comments or anything else. And by doing that, I can go ahead and grade in peace without students disturbing me. And then when I'm ready to release the grades for this assignment, I can go back to the 3 dots, go back to grade posting policy and choose automatic. And it will then notify all of my students at once. Again, the 3 dots, grade posting policy, manually means that you can pause or suspend notifications for the students, and then you can go back and notify them. You just have to remember to do that as well. Unfortunately, you can't, well, on an individual course basis, you can keep the weighted total hidden from the students. So in the total column is where you have the grades all calculated there. Notice that for each of the weighted items, I have gradebook isn't set up exactly the way I would like to. I have all of my different weighted items listed here. In the course settings, if I go down to my course settings here, way down here, if you're in the course details, way down here under the more options, you can hide totals in the grade summary. You can hide grade distribution and so on there. So there are a couple of ways that you can hide some of those items. Going back to the grade book. Oh, the grade exclamation point that's there. Let's click on it and find out. Oh, okay, yeah. It's going to tell me that the scores don't include the scores for the templates for grading, the 0 point based stuff. So it's just telling me that it's not going to include scores for that 0 point based item there. So that's a good point. There's one other thing I wanted to show you, I think, in the grade book that I think is extremely powerful. If you want to excuse a grade for a student, let's just say, the test student here had a reason, some kind of issue, and I just don't want to calculate it. I can just type in the letters EX and it will excuse their grade. Okay. That means that this will not be calculated among their scores. Notice that I have this manually. I've got the grades hidden here. Notice too, let me go ahead and undo this real quick. I want to show you one other quick thing. Let me find a grade book column that has some pretty bad grades in it. Okay, so this, that's not it. This is probably, we'll just use this one here. Okay, so in this particular writing assignment, you'll notice that there's some grades here. Some of the students have made a 60 or 65, some made an 80 or whatever. In Canvas, a really cool feature here is that you can come up to the grade column up here and choose those 3 dots. And you can use a tool called Message Students Who. So for any grade item that you have, you can message your students about it. So if I choose Message Students Who, notice that I can choose to message students who haven't submitted anything yet. So let's say we're getting close to our deadline. I can see that I have 1 student who hasn't turned in anything yet. We're getting close to the deadline. I can come down here and say, deadline is fast approaching, blah, blah, blah. Okay. And I can send that message to that student or whomever who hasn't submitted yet. I can also submit a message for anyone who hasn't been graded. So if anybody hasn't been graded and they're still waiting on their grades, I can send them all a message there. And it's all blind copies them too. The students don't know it was sent to other students as well. If a student scored more than, let's say, a 80, I have 2 students who made more than an 80 on this assignment. I can send them a nice little congratulatory message there to those 2 students. If they scored less than, say, a 70, I have a couple of students who didn't do very well, they didn't pass. I can also just send them a quick message and maybe direct them to some resources that might help them or whatever. So that Message Student Who is a very powerful way when you're in the grade book to just sort of message your students all at once for whatever haven't submitted, haven't been graded, or so on. Okay. In addition to that, one other quick thing before we wrap up, and I know we're a little bit over our time. I do apologize. In the grade book, under those 3, under that little heading up here, notice that for you guys, y'all have a grade posting policy, which means you can manually assign grades for everything. So as I showed you how you can do it for one particular assignment to keep notifications, you can pause notifications for everything in the grade book by choosing the grade posting policy column. But under late policies, you have a couple of options here too. So under late policies, you can automatically apply a grade for any missing assignment. I would recommend doing this at the end of the semester. Don't do it during, because there's always changes that can occur. You may want to grant a little amnesty for students who might need a few extra days or something like that. Remember, anything that doesn't have a score will not be calculated. So to make your grade book accurate, everything has to have a grade, whether it's excused or a 0 or something, in order for your grade book to calculate automatically. Okay, so keep up with your grading. And at the end of the semester, you can go ahead and automatically apply any zeros there, provided that you haven't added zeros along the way, and it will automatically calculate the final grades for the students. You also can apply a late deduction. So whatever grade they get, if they turned it in after the due date, you can deduct X number of percentage per points per day past the due date or by hour past the due date. Okay. And you can also choose a floor. So if you can tell your students, of course, 0. So what happens is that if the student doesn't turn in their assignment after so many days, it will become mathematically impossible for them to even get a score. Then you can automatically apply a 0 after certain days have passed. If they turn it in 5 days later, at least half their grade is going to be deducted. Okay. And so on. You might tell your students, so if you just turn in something with your name on it, I'll give you a 20 or whatever. Then you could make that your, kind of floor, so the student will at least make a 20 if they just turn something in. That's under the columns up there. All right, a little fast and furious. I know we had a lot of information. You guys had some wonderful questions.